and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is being live streamed by Chelmsford Telemedia and posted to the Chelmsford Public Schools website for interested community members to access and watch. In-person public participation will be taking place tonight in accordance with the Chelmsford School Committee Public Participation Guidelines. Anyone speaking tonight during the public input portion of the meeting has notified the superintendent's office of their desire to speak and has been provided with these guidelines. Upon request, written comments received no later than 12 p.m. on the day of this meeting will also be read and made a part of the record of the meeting during the second public comment session. And I don't see anybody in the audience. So welcome to tonight's meeting. I apologize for the late start, but we were finishing up an executive session. We're going to defer our meeting minutes for our last meeting to the next one. We'll do both at that time. And next up is our Chelmsford High School representatives.
Hello, everyone. So term 2 had recently started, and as you all know from the last meeting, we had our musical Mamma Mia, 4 phenomenal shows, and congratulations to all performers and crew for all their hard work, and congratulations to Aaron Maitland for successful first CHS musical. And today we had our pep rally. It's really loud and fun if you guys don't know. And our Thanksgiving football game against Billerica is on Wednesday, 4 p.m. at Fenway, unless it gets postponed to...
That's weird.
Yes, Fenway. Yeah, really fun. You can get your tickets online. And CHS TV will be live streaming a production of the game. So tune in Wednesday afternoon at 3:30 or at 10 a.m. Thursday if the game is postponed due to weather for the production. QR codes to the YouTube live stream can be found posted around the school or as a link on CHS TV's Instagram.
If it's postponed, what will happen?
So the game will be on Thursday morning at Billerica High School.
Thank you.
So the senior class organized a food drive for each grade, and all food will be donated to McCarthy's Project 300, while the Give Club organized another food drive in which items were donated to the Chelmsford Food Pantry. In addition to this, Interact Club sponsored a winter wear drive to coincide with Spirit Week. They received donations of new or gently used hats, mittens, scarves, warm socks, and similar items, and all these items were donated to the Lowell Transitional Living Center. And additionally, this past Saturday, over 1,100 music students from public and private schools across the Northeastern District of Massachusetts auditioned for the 2023 Northeast Senior District Music Ensembles. Approximately 40% of those who auditioned were selected to participate in this prestigious MMEA event, 12 of which were from Chelmsford High School, and I'm actually one of those students. Thank you. Thank you. So congratulations to all students who auditioned on Saturday.
All right, any good news, Linda?
So it's been a week since our last school committee meeting, so not a lot has happened except for all the exciting things happening at CHS right now. So we just want to wish everybody a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you. We have no one registered for public comment tonight?
We don't.
Okay, so moving on to new business.
All right. So tonight, what I'm going to share with you is an update on the strategic planning process and area number 5, which is our facilities and operations work. So each month, again, we're going to highlight one of the different areas that the individuals that work with me on facilities and operations, primarily Brian Curley, who is our Director of Operations for the district. He does a lot of our facilities work. Bill Silver, who's our Director of Technology. And then Rob Aslan is a member. Peggy Gump, who's our Coordinator for School Nursing. John McIsaac, one of the deans at the high school, and Donna Omabono, who is the assistant principal over at Center. So that's the group that has been doing work on the strategic plan, the area of operations and facilities with me. And just to recap, this is consistent. We're going to be reviewing each of the 5 different priority areas this fall and winter. In the halfway point, we'll do a whole overview of the plan and where we're at, and then next July, we'll do a year in review. But the theory of action for our plan has remained the same. And again, the theory of action for the plan is just that we do believe that high-quality academic instruction has to remain at the forefront of our efforts for each and every child in the schools. We do have a focus this year in particular on math. but obviously we've been supporting the literacy and reading program over the last couple of years with the implementation of our new curriculum, and we're going to continue to support both. One of the things we strongly feel is that the learning environment that the students and the staff work and learn in each day is very important. So our facilities group really does, with these other 5 priority areas, look to make our schools the very best it possibly can be for our staff and our students. Our facilities groups takes a look at on capital planning, short-term capital planning, what we can do utilizing the town's capital funds to make really strategic investments in our school buildings to provide the very best educational spaces we can. We also have a longer-term outlook with regard to potential new school buildings in town that would help us, in the 10-plus year out range. And then also, in addition to projects, we want to make sure that the daily cleanliness of the buildings is well maintained. If there are any issues, that it's reported. As you recall, we have a system, we have some excellent custodians in the school system that really do care deeply about the buildings. They're our employees, and they work in the building during the day, and then we augment their staff with contracted cleaners at night who come in and really kind of do a deep cleaning in the building. So there's a lot of moving parts, and our facilities and operations folks work really hard to make sure that the spaces are the best that they possibly can be for our staff and students. And again, this just kind of shows on the plan how we have the 5 different areas. And tonight I'm going to be covering a little bit about facilities and operations for the year. One of the things that we do internally, and I think we also try to report out to the public, is how do we measure success in this particular area? Oftentimes, if we're looking at like an academic focus goal, we're looking at student learning, or student growth, and whatnot year over year. We take a look at the short and long-term capital plans we put together. Are we completing projects ahead of time? Are we late on projects? Are we over under budget is often important to us. We take a look internally at the different work orders that get submitted for like day-to-day repairs in the school systems. And then, again, Brian Curley, our facilities director, will touch on in a few minutes, takes a look at kind of rating or ranking the cleanliness of our buildings. And there's a industry standard called APA that we apply our levels of cleanliness to in the buildings because we want to make sure these spaces are really up to par. So a couple of our different initiatives that started last year and came over into this year is determining which projects to complete, in what order to complete them, to really get the best bang for our buck. We want to make sure that, for staff or any one of the buildings that has any kind of concern with just the day-to-day operations of the buildings or the cleanliness, this is a very kind of clear, coherent work order process. We put requests in, they're assigned a priority level, the work is tracked, it gets completed, and people are satisfied with the results that they see. And we did spend a good chunk of time last year just creating some baseline data, because like a couple of the goals, we didn't necessarily have that. So last year was the first time we actually had a third-party contractor come in and use that APA standard and really take a look at the cleanliness of our building so that we would have that to be able to compare with year over year. So one of the big initiatives for us this year, and there were really 3 that we're reporting on now. Obviously, we have the baseline data from the APA reporting, and we want to make sure that we have the vendor come back in, whether it's that vendor or a different vendor. It happens to be the same one again this year. Reassess the work period over period and make sure that we're still maintaining the level of cleanliness that we want to. Brian has contracted with an individual to come back over a 6-month span between October and March and make sure they go out to each of our schools and actually complete an evaluation. And then we can take that evaluation and kind of benchmark it to where we were a year ago. One of the other focuses we had this year, and this came from some of the school admin, was really trying to make the staff aware of what the process should be, right down to the classroom level, where if a teacher comes into school on a particular day and the class isn't up to par, something isn't clean the way they'd want it to be, to be very clear for them to show like what the expectation should be. What should happen on a daily basis? What would happen cleanliness-wise, say, on a school vacation week? Or, what's another level of cleaning that should, say, take place over the course of a summer when you can kind of do a deeper clean? So Brian and his folks have been actually working to create some kind of checklists or some charts that would show what the expected level of cleanliness is and who's responsible for what, whether it's one of our custodians or it's one of our contractor cleaners. And then the staff, after the first of the year, when we come back in January during one of the staff meetings, the admin are going to share with the staff this documentation so that they have a very clear understanding of what should be expected. And then also, if they're coming in and something isn't done, what is the reporting process that they should follow to have something be remedied? And does someone then come back after the fact and remedy it? Internally, Brian, over the course of the school year, is developing a process. This is the last bullet we're still on track for. A process with both the custodians and the contractor cleaning company to take a look at the APA standard reports that we receive, to take a look at the different work orders that we receive. Usually the school custodians would put them in, so if a classroom teacher had an issue, they would let their custodian know. The custodian would enter the work order, and then the work would be complete. But putting a process together where they can sit monthly and actually review these right down to the school level and make sure that the requests that are getting inputted are getting remedied, they're getting done in a timely fashion, and then we can obviously report out on it. So I think that particular goal is kind of a continuation of the work from last year. It is something now we have benchmark data from last year to be able to work off of. So that's significant for us. But that is one of the focus areas for this year, to make sure that our staff really do feel comfortable and that they're in a good working environment with the staff and students. Second one is kind of tied to this, and this does tie to the work order system itself. So there are certain things like a custodian will fix on their own if they find something either uncleaned or needs to be done on a smaller basis within the school. We also then obviously have the third party, which is like the contractor cleaners, which will be doing some of the night cleaning in the buildings. It's pretty clear what their roles are. But if something actually breaks within a building, let's say we had a bubbler break within a school and it wasn't working properly, or we had a toilet that wasn't flushing properly, or an electric switch that happened to be out. We aren't like tradespeople to actually do those repairs on our own. The town DPW department employs the trades folks that would actually make those repairs. Or let's say it was a bigger repair that had to do with HVAC, they would have a contract with a contractor to potentially come in during, say, the heating season or the cooling season to help us with a particular repair. What we want to make sure is that the work order system that we use is called School Dude, but we want to make sure that the work order system that we use is very succinctly set up, that we're actually capturing the requests within fields that we can track. So if something is, say, an electrical issue, it can be coded as an electrical issue, and it can then be kind of sent off to the electricians to work on. Or if it's plumbing, it can go to plumbing. Or if it happens to be masonry, it can go to someone who's working with masonry to do. But that, and this is the work that we're going to be doing between kind of now and then the springtime, would be to really sit down, and this is something that myself, Brian Curley, Christine Clancy, who's the new DPW director, Matt Schweitzer, who's the new facility manager for the town, and then Paul Cohen on a monthly basis meets with us as well, that we're going to sit and kind of reach agreement about, the different types of tickets that get submitted, what kind of level of assignment something should have. So as far as the priority is concerned, like what would be a top priority, a medium priority, a little bit lower priority. What would the expected turnaround time be for a repair? Because even if you rate something, let's say that's a lower priority, you still want to make sure that it's getting done in a certain amount of time. You don't want to have a ticket that you enter, say, sit for 2 months because it happened to be a low priority. Yes, let's say there was a floor tile that had to be replaced or whatnot, and you had a toilet that broke. Obviously, you need a plumber to come over immediately to take care of the toilet to be done. But if it was more of a cosmetic or a tile type thing, yes, maybe that could wait a week. So what we're going to do is kind of go through and actually reach agreement about priority levels, how long it should take for something to be reported on, because then both internally, again, Brian's going to be looking at these reports monthly with our custodians and our contractor cleaners, but we want to start producing reports for the school committee as well, tied to the strategic plan. Again, the same way we report on the academics and how our students are doing, we're going to report on our buildings and how repairs and responses and things like that are being done within the building. So there's a little bit of ramp-up time that's needed for that, to make sure that the system is set up for that. And then once we're able to do that reporting, again, developing some type of an internal periodic reporting process, it'll likely be monthly, where Brian and Matt or Christine and myself sit down to just review the outstanding tickets, make sure if something has been, entered and it's not done, we know why. We can provide a little update to the staff member, because again, if you're a staff member that's asked for something, even if it's not critical, you still want to kind of know when it's going to get done, that it hasn't fallen off the radar. So that's something that we're working on for after the first of the year, once we have the agreement around the priority areas and where we're going. And then the third, a real significant piece of our work is obviously on the short-term capital planning. We can't do too much on the long-term capital planning with this particular goal because our long-term capital plan is potentially looking at a new school building project. And again, that's kind of with a partnership with the MSBA. We've identified Parker Middle School as the school we would like to work on. The application is in. We just await consideration on that. We can't really do too much more with that particular long-term goal. So on the short term, what we do have control over is the town's capital spending each year. So the town on a given year typically had been budgeting, $2.5 to $3.5 million for capital. There are a long list of requests that come in, not only from the schools, but all the other town departments. There's a town capital committee that convenes to take a look at the projects. This is what we talked about at our last meeting when we had projects for the current year we wanted considered. We went through a process of prioritizing those. Dennis is the school committee's rep to the capital planning committee. And a week from Thursday is when we'll actually be presenting our projects to talk a little bit about them, why would we want to do them, and then they get all included in kind of a global discussion about, again, what had typically been kind of that $2.5 to $3.5 million number, which there was some discussion about increasing to maybe a little over $4 million this year, just because there are a significant number of requests from town departments to have projects funded. So what we do is we go through a process in November, as noted here. So at the last meeting, I brought you a list of all the projects we'd completed prior. We had a couple of projects that had been deferred, so we have those still on the list. We then had all the projects we wanted considered for fiscal '25. Those were on the list. We went through a process of talking about them all, prioritizing them all, so then that got completed. I sent that off to John Souza, who chairs the capital planning committee for the town. And again, that's the work that's going to start next week. But depending on those projects that actually get recommended for funding, the next step in the process would be an April town meeting. That's traditionally our budget meeting, so that's when our budget for fiscal '25 would go forward. That's when our capital plan requests with all the other town departments would go forward, and then whatever gets funded in April, we have to basically then schedule and complete the projects. So typically that money is available for the fiscal '25, which starts July 1st. In the schools, it's a little tough for us because we really have a short window of getting projects done over the 8 to 10 weeks of the summer. A lot of the projects that we bring forward can't really be done during the school year when staff and students are in the buildings. So we try to get done what we can between, the bulk of it, like July to August. If there's things that bleed over a little bit into September, that's okay if it's kind of finishing up a project. That can happen. So that's something we monitor. If not, sometimes we do take that fall to really make sure that we have accurate bids. We go out to bid, and we then have a project that's going to be completed, let's say that following summer or during a vacation week, things along those lines. And then we start the cycle all over again, which is the third bullet. So every November, we would get together and actually, again, kind of prioritize the new list. If anything was deferred, talk about, does it still need to get done? We would have fallen the new list. And then bring that forward. And lastly, on this particular note, this does happen, but monthly, myself again, Paul Cohen, Christine Clancy, Matt Schweitzer, and Brian Curley sit down. We take a look at all the capital projects. Obviously, I'm primarily focused on the schools, but we do look at all the town projects as well, the school projects. We see the status, if they're complete, if they're in process, if they're going out to bid, are there any issues that we may have with them? So we do that on a monthly basis. And we make little adjustments as needed. So that has really been working out very well. That type of a meeting that we've been having is what I mentioned on like just the cleanliness piece or the work order piece that we're going to be adding. So we haven't had that to date. But that really has worked out very well. We've gotten very good cooperation from the town. The DPW folks with the staff that they have do a lot of work to support the schools. Again, we just want to make sure that we're all kind of going in the same direction and getting the most we possibly can done in a timely fashion so that it's benefiting, again, our staff and students in the building. So those are kind of the three prongs of the facility and operation work. And again, it's all done to basically support the rest of the programming that happens in the district. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody have any questions?
I provide that as an update for you.
On the long-term capital planning for the building, When is, oh, are we to know? Is it December, January?
Yeah, it's in early December.
Early December, okay.
So the MSBA board meeting is the second or third week in December.
Oh, good.
So we should know before the holidays.
Dennis?
Yeah, just, so we have our 10-year capital plan.
Right.
So we know, that, like, we're gonna put on the capital this time, the vestibule at McCarthy. And we know that if it's successful, we wanna do that to the other buildings. Do we just add that to our plan? I mean, how does that work?
Yes, so there are actually a couple of different things. If we, because again, we started putting this whole plan together when we did the big assessment with Durham Whittier back in like 2016, 17. There are other things that come to light in between, and like even at the capital planning meeting next week when we talk, we have our Durham Whittier report that's really kind of school-specific, but DPW has also been looking at a couple of factors that like we didn't have within our report. There were a couple of different, like, say, school roofs. Like, we didn't really cover roofs in our report, boilers for buildings and things like that. So DPW, as part of their request, and they did this last year, like the Harrington needed a new boiler, so they put that on their list of requests. So that can all kind of come to light. And then what we would do is, so if there was something like brand new that we wanted to add another vestibule somewhere else, we can either fund it internally ourselves as part of our budget process or one-time spending process. But if we wanted to add it as an item for a future year, we certainly can do that. And that is something that happens from time to time. And that's why you might see something jump around like priority-wise, just based on what's happening at that time.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing, if there's some correlation between this and our long-term facilities plan. So that, it sounds like you addressed.
Well, it is, and it all kind of ties in, because again, like if, let's say we are able to advance, say, the Parker School project, right? And we have several items on there, not only this year, but in the outlier years coming forward. So if we're successful in that vein, then maybe we don't put some of those capital projects on as a priority for Parker, because we know that building wouldn't be there long-term. And we can kind of do that on an annual basis. And I will tell you, annually, we really do that. So like, once we actually figure out which projects we're going to be able to fund this year with capital, those obviously go forward to the town. But then internally, I have like a little working document, because I have come back to you with one-time money and said, you know what, unfortunately, the capital planning committee wasn't able to do this, but it really is a priority for us. So I think it's worth us making the investment on that. Or we might say, you know what, we really wanted to do this, but we need to just let it get in cycle and try to get it funded again the following year.
Can you give me the short answer to, how do you determine what gets funded with the school money and what gets funded with town capital planning? I know it's a big process, but kind of just a summary.
Sure. And Dennis is laughing at me. I'll try to be brief. So really, either funding source, what?
Nothing else, just.
Either funding source can fund either, right? The school's operating budget is primarily to be used for the day-to-day operation of the school department, and typically would not fund what we call a capital project that would be over $150,000 in value. If something has that type of a value, and if it has a lifespan of at least 5 years, then typically we would put that in the town funding cycle, because that's a pretty significant dollar threshold. We happen to have had some like one-time funding that we've been using ourselves to fund some projects. We typically would do that for like more like curriculum materials. Like we bought, say, the new reading series or the new math series. But one thing that we did decide last year to fund was the science lab upgrades at the middle school. Now, that's something that we could have had in the town capital list. It was a pretty significant number, and it wasn't necessarily a priority on our list of 10-year priorities until a few years from now. However, when we put the original list together, we didn't know at the time we were going to be doing the realignment to the middle schools, and it was just an opportune time to do that. So if we were bringing both 7th and 8th grades together into one building, and we really needed to have updated science labs, we had that short window over the summer to do it. We had one-time capital funding. You can use it if you decide to allocate it, and we thought that was worthwhile. So long and short of it, either funding source is viable or it's allowable. It's just traditionally projects that have a greater life experience than 5 years and are like $150,000 or more would typically first go to the town capital fund.
Which tends to be a lot of the bigger
The
buildings.
bigger building-based projects, correct.
So I want to get some input from our student representatives, just about what your thoughts are on the cleanliness of the schools. So hold on for one thing. There's two things I need you to keep in mind. One is that Chelmsford High School opened in 1974, so probably before your parents were born. So that's the first thing. And then the second is, we're not talking necessarily about, well, kids throw trash on the floor sometimes, right? You know what I'm saying? Obviously, we want to clean, there's some things that, are, people just have to have better behavior, maybe in the lunchroom and things like that. But beyond those two things, keeping in mind those two things, do you have any thoughts on the cleanliness or the condition of the high school?
I think the condition, I'm in the school, I think it's fine. Obviously, if you're gonna compare high schools, maybe Billerica has a newer high school, but, the high school's functional. It doesn't have to be the prettiest at all, but, I think, it gets the job done.
Okay.
I don't ever see any major problems. I'm not like, oh, this room, I can't work in here, this is happening, I don't.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I have the same thoughts. Everything works fine. I think there was one day where there were a bunch of wires hanging out of the ceiling everywhere, but it didn't affect it.
But usually, if there's something like that, they fix it. If there's a problem like that.
So you don't see these things
Yeah,
going on
no,
forever
yeah, no,
and ever
they're
and ever,
quickly
right?
fixed. And yeah, it's a school, so it doesn't have to be the prettiest, obviously, but
Well, if you have some ideas to how to pretty it up, let us know, because, maybe there's something that we can, take into consideration. But to that end, I know we are doing some work with the staff around reporting these issues. Are we doing any, gathering information from both the staff and the students around what they think the condition is, or improvements that they think could be made in order to be able to enhance the environment?
Most of those, I am not directly with the staff or the students. Most of the one-time requests, so we do put a process together where right after the holidays, when we come back in January, I'll send an email out to the school admin to ask them to work with the staff in their buildings and identify any potential projects that we could use for one-time funding. Oftentimes, those are things that'll come equipment, different materials or supplies they might use for their classroom or their program. That's where a lot of that stuff comes from. It's not unheard of, though, to have a building improvement thing come forward. There was a request from Harrington, and they wanted the shade structure for the playground. And that's nothing, again, it's not really a classroom type thing, but that was something that came from, I believe, staff and students in the building. So there is a mechanism for that, there's a vehicle for that. I don't personally reach out, but I kind of put it on the building admin to talk to their staff and bring things back. I think at the, again, depending on the level, students would be communicating with their teachers, or they would hear if there was something that wasn't working well and could get put in. I do think, to your point, the buildings may not be the prettiest. I think they're very functional. I think you would agree. And the town does a very nice job of maintaining them. That was one of our issues that we had, even on the longer-term plan, when we were trying to advance a high school project. Because, Billerica High School is beautiful. It's new. Tewksbury High School is beautiful. It's new. Lowell's getting a new high school. They're going to be, just because they're new buildings, they're going to be very, beautiful. They're going to be pretty shiny and new. But again, ours is very practical. It's, what's that?
I still love the high school.
She loves the high school. They're functional, they really are. But some of your materials just won't be as shiny as the new schools. But we do put a lot of time and effort into making sure that the spaces are well equipped and clean and usable.
If you happen to think of something, or if you hear students coming up with some innovative ideas, I know that we had there was a group, and we saw their plans last year, and I think it was, not the architecture, but it was the program at the high school. And they had come up with a design for, as you're walking in, some coverage. Remember that?
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the name of the class was. It was an engineering class, but it was really a really cool idea. But if, people have ideas, we would love to hear them for, making things a little bit beyond functional.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
I think we ran a survey, because I remember this, where people identified what they were either satisfied with, not satisfied with, or considered to be the top issues. And if I remember correctly, our buildings and the age of our buildings were identified by most parents, at least, or who
Well,
had,
that was part of the visioning.
yeah.
When we
who
did
had
the
kids in
strategic planning and the
system
visioning. Right.
as their number one concern. one of their top concerns.
The age of the building was one of their
Yeah.
concerns?
Yeah,
See,
and they
when
are.
you walk in, I remember when you walk in from Central School and you go to McCarthy for the first time, as a parent with your children, you say, ooh, what happened? I mean, it's like, it's really, and then as you're walking through McCarthy with other parents who went there themselves, and, so they start talking about that, and then you get to the heat time of the year where it's really unbearable, in my opinion, in some of those classrooms. It's very difficult to deal with. I think people would identify that as one of a key problem in the system, because you've got to be able to learn and the environment's got to be there. But I understand exactly what you're saying. You still love the place, and that's because the town does its best to keep it up. We're doing our best to keep it up, but at the same time, it's about the people who are there and the experience that you have in the process and making the very best of it. And so that's great.
Yeah, I can't think of a time I've been in the classroom like you, like this is really old. If it were old, things would be breaking, so, but it's not like it's functional.
That's great.
And then I had one other quick question on the APA report.
Yeah.
Is that going to help us in terms of when we renegotiate contracts?
Oh, the custodial cleaning contracts? Yes, I mean, that's kind of a device that Brian uses with cleaning companies to kind of hold them accountable. And we did, if you recall, the last time we went out to bid, we had a couple of different contractors that came on board. One happened to be a new one, and they weren't living up to their expectations. So they ended up actually kind of rescinding their contract and going away, and then another contractor came in. And no, so those APA reports are very valuable to him as he's kind of doing the contract administration piece to make sure people are doing what they're supposed to do. Yeah, it's helpful.
Does anybody have any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. The second and third items tonight are kind of interwoven. Linda put together for us just a recommendation to change one of the professional development days in March, and then I had put a request on to just consider changing the school committee day. The first one just relates to, on both of them, we get notified recently that the presidential primary election is going to be Tuesday, March 5th. We didn't have that on the calendar. So we traditionally try to have a release day on the day of the election, just to have less traffic at McCarthy Middle School, because that is still one of our voting sites. So we have on the calendar for professional development Wednesday, March 6th. So the recommendation is just move that back a day. It's still early enough to notify parents and have that PD day on Tuesday, the 5th. And that kind of corresponds to the next point, which was the school committee calendar. So obviously, if the primary is on the 5th, and we already had scheduled a school committee meeting on the 5th, we can't meet on the night of an election, so we'd have to move that day anyway. So my recommendation was to just bump it out a week, and then at the same time we're doing that, to bump the second meeting in March out a week. So when we meet in February, the first meeting, I give you the budget recommendation, and then because of February break, we always push the second meeting in February to the last meeting in February. So we're kind of butted up right at the end of February, early March. By pushing the first week out of March is perfect, it's not going to hurt us. But then because the first Tuesday in April happens to be town election day, we don't meet that night either. So if we push the second meeting in March out a week from the 19th to the 26th, it just spreads our meetings out, and it provides us, in case we had business we had to get done, it just provides us a little bit better cushion to be able to do that. And again, it doesn't hurt us logistically at all, because we have plenty of time to plan. So I don't know if you'd like to talk about it or take them as one action or two actions, but they're kind of interwoven, and that was the rationale for these two items.
I thought it was because of my birthday that night. I just want to move the meeting. So they don't do it on my birthday.
My father
Yeah,
and your birthday,
yeah,
I know,
you-
the same day.
Big,
Maria's birthday.
So March 5th moves to March 6th and March
No.
19 to 26.
no, 6 moves to the 5th,
6th to the 5th.
To the 5th.
and then the 5th moves
professional
to the
development.
12th. We'll do them separate.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, let's take them
All
separately.
right, I'll do the first one, okay? Make a motion to move the previously scheduled half-day professional day from Wednesday, March 6th, 2024, to Tuesday, March 5th, 2024.
Okay. Second?
Take a second. Or-
Is there any discussion?
Who seconded? Thank you.
Any discussion? Did you need some help?
No, No, I got, that's the development days.
Right.
The meetings are the other day. It's okay.
Okay, two separate, okay.
We're talking about two
All right,
different
anything
days.
else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
4-0 in favor.
Okay.
Okay, I make a motion to move the previously scheduled school committee meeting of Tuesday, March 5th, 2024 to Tuesday, March 12th, 2024, and the previously scheduled school committee meeting of Tuesday, March 19th, 2024 to Tuesday, March 26th, 2024.
Second.
Hey, is there any discussion? Or is everybody all set on that? Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
The professional development, that means that the students still go to school half a day?
Half a day instead of a full day. I know.
I'm sorry, but just especially in an election that's, a federal election right now. It's a lot of traffic. Hopefully, they have a lot of voting in advance.
I just anecdotally, I'll tell you that the voting in advance has certainly helped. Again, it's not ideal, but we haven't had an issue over the last couple of elections.
And I will say to that, we met with Tricia Zuris back, I think it was about a year ago, we met with her. But there's certainly been ongoing communication, just to see how it is that we can continue to maintain a high level of safety. And I know that she had purchased like some gates, right, that were closing. Certain times where students were transitioning, where people couldn't come in to vote. So, and I think we need to just continue to work on that.
And we've also minimized traffic because we don't, like the world language classes used to be out on the mods. They're not anymore. They're now in the main building. So there's less kids going out to the modular classrooms as part of the regular day. So that also cuts down on the traffic flow.
I know, but we also have a different system now for buses being at buildings. There's a greater
Right.
number,
Right.
Right.
which is much more traffic. And I think the congestion is going to be, it's
Well,
going to be
I think,
different.
I think we'll be able to see on this one how it's going to work. Because I have no judgment on this. I think that the primary is going to be less attended than, say, like town election in April. And then obviously next fall, where it's a real president election, it'll be more people. I think this will give us a better sense for exactly how that traffic is going to be with the buses and whatnot going forward.
Does Tricia have any sense, being the political climate the way it is, whether the turnout for the presidential primary is likely to be higher than usual? Do you know if that's something?
I don't think she's made any predictions at this point. I will say, there has been at various points in the past, some ideas brought forth, and even some legislation, I think, that was proposed around removing voting from the schools. Part of the problem is, so for example, you can't hold it like at the Elks, because that's a place where they serve alcohol. That is correct, right? Okay, so, but, to look at, maybe on those days, they're not serving alcohol or something like that, The other is to do Saturday elections, is another, thought. There are many towns, around Massachusetts that do Saturday elections. Actually, I think that's just for local elections. I don't think it's just for
Right.
local elections. So there are some things out there, and I do think that it is worth, continuing to have conversations about that, things that make sense, and keeping school safety a high priority for us, as we kind of come to these times where we're having the primary elections or, the national elections, so that, if there is a high turnout and there isn't mechanisms in place for the early voting, that, we can keep everybody safe. So, I don't know.
Did we vote on that second motion?
No.
Not yet, no.
Just want to make sure we didn't forget.
So this one, the second motion was on the school committee, okay? We kind of veered off and went back to
The first motion.
the first motion, but that's okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
4-0 in favor.
Now, those will be changed on the website
Yeah, so I'll update your packet and we'll change them on the website.
and with
And I'll tell
Chelmsford Cable.
telemedia.
Yeah, Chelmsford.
Right,
I remember
TV.
that.
Yes, we'll tell them.
Okay.
And there's still plenty of time. I mean, it's
No, no,
only
I know,
November,
yeah.
so, and I don't think parents will be thrown off. It's only moving by one day, and we're gonna give them enough notice. I'll make sure in the newsletter we flag that.
Okay.
So, that's all I had for tonight. Thank you.
Great. Does anybody have any liaison reports? Thank you. And congratulations. Does anybody have any liaison reports? Nothing?
Not today.
Okay. Does anybody have any new items or action items that they would like added to an upcoming agenda?
I would love to see a report at some point on what's happening in terms of classroom numbers,
So enrollment status?
enrollment, but also how many students in each class.
Okay.
And not just average, but actual numbers. And then, and that would, for me, it would be high school and K through 8. I have been getting some, and it, just I'd like to see what the numbers are, but some people have been commenting on some of the classes in the high school are pretty large. So some input on that. And just to see overall how the increased numbers of students we have in the system is impacting what's going on each day in each school and in each classroom in terms of numbers would be great. The other type of report I'd love to see is at the high school, what's happening with the course offerings. I think that's changed a bit in terms of from when I was last there. I'm sure every year it does change. But what we're looking at in, for example, in the area of art, theater, and so on, that may have changed. What's going on with our history offerings, the leveling, what's happening with that, especially now that we have these pathways that are fairly, not that old in our system. How is that impacting what the course offerings are in any way? Just some of those kinds of reports.
So just so I'm
Would be
clear,
good.
you want more of a, so we got an enrollment update in the packet that we presented to the state representatives, but you want something more, broken down even more than that? Okay. All right. Right.
Because it's always good to give them work.
Well, just as an aside.
No, I think it's just important for us to know what's
No, but
going on.
Bump
with
it
that.
down to your.
No, so we, about this time of year, we get the certified Sims report back, which is the October 1 report. And then at one of the 2 December meetings, I always do the annual October 1 numbers, so it's coming. It'll either be
Great.
the first or the second meeting in December. So,
I
and-
knew you were coming, Jay.
So
with
it's coming,
this,
and
so-
then we'll include, have a good night. And then we'll include
Have a
the
nice break.
Yeah, happy
the
Thanksgiving.
breakdown of
Have a great break.
individual classes, if you'd like, that's fine.
That's
And
great.
we'll add the classes. I need a little more information on what you're looking for in the course offering thing.
In terms of academics, some of the things I'm getting are, in the history area especially, in the humanities type of areas, we don't really have a pathway right now that is about that. And some students are doing well, but may not want AP level. Some students are doing well, but, and really well, and may not even think that, our course offerings through the community college are sufficiently challenging, actually. But they may still not want to do AP because they don't want to go through the testing or whatever the choices are. We took away an honors type of level, an in-between level. What is the impact of that? Is that sufficient for our students? Are we offering a sufficient number of courses and meeting the needs of what our students need? To meet what they want to learn, what they can learn.
Is the question specifically why the honors level history isn't there anymore?
No.
Okay.
I'm looking to see if we're offering enough. So I think when we look at the report on the
Well,
numbers.
if I give you the numbers, because you're gonna have all the individual
Yeah,
classes
We're
listed.
gonna see that, and then if we see that there's, for example, Spanish may be, in the past, when we've gotten reports, I've always noticed that the language department,
Yeah,
very large class numbers.
yeah.
Okay, I think we've got to identify what the reasoning is behind that. I think one of them may very well be that it's very difficult to find language teachers who stay over a long period of time and who meet the needs of our students academically, but that might be one of the reasons.
Right.
But in addition to that, it may very well be that not enough, we don't have 3 levels of language, or we only have 2 levels of language, that kind of thing. I'd like to understand better what's happening and why there seems to be a blockage somehow in some of these courses where their numbers are extremely high.
Do you think, for starters, if I provide the enrollment report and you have the list of all the
That will
classes,
help.
is that going to be something you might be able to take a look at?
That we then
And then
can
ask other
possibly
questions about?
identify other needs to
Because I
look
just
at.
don't know where to start on the second one without knowing more about the first one. So what if I do the enrollment one for you?
And then we'll go
see what
from
you get
there.
out of there?
That
and
would be
then-
great.
Okay.
It might be better in some kind of report from departments. So, for instance, I don't remember a report from the arts department or the music department or anything for a very long time. Probably all the years I've been on the school committee, I don't remember one. So it may very well be that that's one of the things we might need, to know better what's happening in those departments.
Well, they used to just come when we would do like the spotlight on we used to do the schools
Right.
one and then we would do the departments. So I know like Christy would normally come actually around like the holiday season because it was festive, and she would do the report out of what was happening. But like this year, we don't have them queued up to come because we're focusing on the strategic plan stuff.
But it's not only this year. I think it's been ever since COVID. We probably haven't really focused on that. But it's okay. So,
Okay.
yeah, let's look at numbers and then let's go from there and
Okay.
see what's,
All right.
if we can.
All right, Dennis, do you
Just
have?
a minor thing, with the next personnel report, just a report on how we're doing with substitutes. I know there've been reports of schools in the state where they can't get substitutes and the kids are going, 4 classes out of 5 with sitting in the cafeteria type of thing. So how we're doing and if we need to do anything to improve that.
Okay.
So,
I got in the future or something to piggyback on what you said, but I'm going to wait for the enrollment.
Okay, let's
things.
go to the first report, because I think
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm going to wait for the enrollment, and then if that's still a question, I'll bring it up in the future.
okay.
all right, and then I was wondering if we could also, I know that some school systems are piloting the new IEP format, and I was just wondering if we could get an update, not necessarily, maybe a little bit closer to February, March.
Sure.
Just where we're at in terms of that whole process.
We weren't a pilot district,
No, I know.
so we just have to implement.
Right, are we, if we're doing any training or,
Yeah.
kind of what we can do maybe with, for parents to help prepare them for what that's gonna look like.
Sure.
Is that starting this year?
It's
Next year.
being piloted
okay.
by some systems and then it's starting next year, but it looks really different. It
Yeah.
really does.
Really different good or really different bad? You being an I especially.
I mean, I like it.
Yeah, okay.
It's a little different focus. It really focuses on student strengths and heavy on the data to kind of, this is my opinion anyway, to kind of support, what decisions we're making as a team for, areas that we want to see the students receive services in. It's a little different format, and it's taken me a little bit of time to kind of get used to. But I do think it might be worth, as I said, preparing parents before they actually get into the meeting and see that it's different.
And right along with that, then would be the report from the equity group, because that, in many
And
ways,
that's kind of a component of
is
everything.
part of an impact on what's happening there and the roles of para, special educator, and regular classroom
Well,
teacher.
and that report's in December, right? So the equity group is gonna
Right.
present in December, but then we can, kind of do a high level at that meeting. But because the IEP change is pretty significant, maybe like this spring, we could have Amy and even the special ed department chairs, or a whole group kind of talk a little bit about what that change is gonna mean and how she's planning to roll that out to staff and parents, CPAC, things along those lines.
And then, I know this has been outstanding, and it may have been resolved already, but have we figured out the whole policy update thing? I'm sorry,
No, we did. I think we were ahead of the curve.
okay,
Like that big list that we
right,
got out, I think we had already covered almost all of it. I didn't go through it with, fine tooth comb, but the only one I think that we were just still questioning was the public comment one. And I think,
Public comment.
I think we were kind of
Right.
sort of comfortable where we're at, and, if anything, it'd be just small wording things, so.
Okay.
If we want to,
So
look
do
at
you
it in
want
more
to put
detail,
that
we
on
can.
too? Just,
Yeah, I scanned it real quick, like, we did a lot of work, well, you did
Yes.
a lot of work on that, and we were ahead of the curve getting them approved. I have not gone back and kind of gone point by point, but maybe over the coming break or something like that, I can do that, and just see where we're at, if there's anything. It would be like a small tweak to public participation, but we can look at it.
and then remember, we have tri-board on December 11th. And also, you probably remember from town meeting that an article was passed where the select board is going to engage an outside group to help with the strategic plan. And they're looking for a member of the school committee to act as a liaison for that. And so if people are interested, if you wouldn't mind just emailing me whether or not you're interested, and then we'll go from there. All right, so. Take a look at your schedules, everybody. So,
When are they starting that?
so right now, they're just actually assembling the team. And I think that team will be assembled by the beginning of December-ish. So, and then as far as anything else is concerned, I don't know.
Okay.
All right, is there anything else? All right, then with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I apologize. I need to back up one. We had no other public comments, correct?
Oh, we didn't, no.
Okay. I kind of saw that, but I just want to make sure.
We did a motion, we did a second.
Got a second? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4-0 in favor. Good night, everybody.
All right. Thank you.